Okay, so previous shiurim on this week's parasha are from 4 years ago, I think. There was a shiur called Death on the Nile. From 3 years ago, Vital Signs. From 2 years ago, there was a shiur called Ascension. And from last year, there was a shiur called Decimation and Euphoria, all of which should be found on TorahAnytime.com. Go there to supplement what I'm going to speak about tonight, which is quite heavy on stories, actually. There's a few stories here this evening, which I want to share with you. So, this week's parasha is Parashat Bo. As I mentioned last year, this is my late father's Bar Mitzvah Sedra, so it always gives me pride to talk about the parasha. It gives me pride to talk about any parasha, but especially this is very significant for me. It's also around about his of his birthday. It's around about the time of my birthday as well. We were born a few days apart, but my parasha was later. It was Parashat Yitro. We'll get to that in a couple of weeks' time. So, Bo contains the last three of the plagues. And we see, if we go to Perek Yud Aleph Pasuk Chet, which is 11 verse 8, we're going to see the state that Moshe Rabbeinu left the palace after he'd finished talking with Pharaoh after that particular plague. It says, "Vayardu kol avadecha ele elai v'ishtachvu li leimor tzei ata v'chol ha'am asher b'raglecha v'acharei chen eitzei v'yeitzei me'im paro b'chori af." So Pharaoh, in his ungracious manner, he told Moshe Rabbeinu to get out. He said, after this plague, go out. I don't want to see you again. Which is, quite impudent, but that's Pharaoh. But what's interesting, at the end of this verse, it explains something about Moshe which we've never seen before. I'll repeat, Vayetze me'im paro b'chori af. Moshe Rabbeinu himself left the palace angry. Moshe Rabbeinu, the humblest of all men, was angry? That doesn't sound right. I mean, there's anger and there's anger. Was Moshe Rabbeinu reacting to the fact that Pharaoh told him to get out? I mean, if somebody told me to get out, I'd be pretty angry, but we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu here. Anav Mikol Adam, the humblest of all men. Since when did he have a drop of anger? And we see in later parashiyot, there's when we talk about the Meimah River, the time that Moshe Rabbeinu was, when his entrance or his denial to go into Israel was finally sealed, that was when he said to Klal Yisrael, Shimuna Hamorim, listen here, O rebels. That was the extent of his anger. He called the Jewish people rebels. And that was enough of a shade of anger for him to be refused to go to Eretz Israel. But it doesn't say anything near to, Bachori Af, which means like he was burning with anger. That doesn't sound like the Moshe Rabbeinu that we know. So, I saw a beautiful idea which totally has a different take on what happened here. Because you have to understand what the relationship was between Pharaoh and Moshe Rabbeinu. Because at the end of the day, the sequence of events was that Moshe Rabbeinu was adopted by Batya, the daughter of Paro. And of course, Batya lived at home. She wasn't a girl who just when she got to 16 and she moved out of home, she found her own palace. She lived in her father's house, in her father's palace. So, Moshe Rabbeinu was raised by Pharaoh, in Pharaoh's under Pharaoh's nose. And Moshe Rabbeinu, we know, so many times we've seen this, Moshe Rabbeinu was so iconic. He defined Hakarat Hatov, gratitude. He was the definition of gratitude. Everything about Moshe Rabbeinu was gratitude. From the fact that he didn't do the plague of blood. He had gratitude for the water because the water saved him. And then the sand, because the sand covered the Egyptian. So many times we see Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu, believe it or not, had gratitude to Pharaoh. And every single plague, he kept saying to Pharaoh, come on, let the people go. Time after time, he got a flat no. In the beginning, yes, I'm very sorry. He had all the excuses from Pharaoh. Hashem is the tzaddik and everything. But at the end of the day, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted Pharaoh to concede, to say, you know what, I'm going to let them go. Because he had hakarat tov, he had gratitude to Pharaoh. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want anybody to suffer. But now what happened? Now we were at the end of the 9th plague. We're about to go into the 10th plague. What was the 10th plague? Makat Bechorot, the death of the firstborn. Now every single other plague, it affected the people. It did affect Pharaoh as well, but it affected the people. Now, Pharaoh didn't care about his people. He had no loyalty to anybody except for himself. But this last plague was going to affect Pharaoh himself. Why? Because Pharaoh himself had a firstborn son who in fact died in that plague. So now Moshe Rabbeinu knew, listen, every single plague Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to Pharaoh, please, come on, let them go, get out of this. You can save yourself. You can get out of this. There's a way out. No, every time he was refused. Now, what did Pharaoh do? In spite of himself, he said, get out, I never want to see you again. Now, Moshe knew at this point, he said, he's throwing me out, and now the last plague is going to affect his own son. That's it. It's game over now. Again and again, I tried to tell Pharaoh, look, there's a way out of this. Come on, you can do this. He kept getting no. But Moshe Rabbeinu kept coming back again and again and again. Moshe Rabbeinu could have just said, you know what? Forget you. I'm not interested in you. I've given you a chance. Khalas, I'm giving up now. After the first plague, he could have said that. Or maybe the second plague. Every single plague, Moshe Rabbeinu came back again and again and again. Despite Pharaoh pushing him away. Now, Pharaoh threw him out. Moshe Rabbeinu knew that's it. Now, if I can't come back, and now his own son's going to die, then that's it. The game is over. The dialogue was over. I cannot now. I don't stand a chance of convincing you to stop this madness, said Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm out. I'm throwing my cards in. Now, this teaches us a tremendous lesson, because so many times we can battle with situations, or people for that matter, where we want the best for them, but they don't want to listen. And we keep trying, and then in the end we can just turn around and say, you know what? I'm trying to help you. Majnoon, I'm trying to help you. Listen to what I'm saying. You know what? You don't listen? Okay, I'm out. Finished. I'll give you like a mashal. Maybe this is not the best mashal. Maybe this might be a bit close to the bone. But sometimes we have parents who are getting elderly and more and more, they have more and more senior moments. I'm trying to put this in a very delicate way. And we try and help them. We say, look, mommy or daddy, take your tablets. You need to take that. No, I don't want the tablets. In Persian, they used to say, Nabu Dukhtur, I don't need a doctor. Yeah? What are you giving me this? And they refuse, they stubbornly refuse. But they have to take the medicine. The medicine is what's keeping them alive. No, I don't want the medicine. And you try, and in the end you're thinking, oh, I'm wasting my breath. They don't want to listen to me, so I'm going to give up. You cannot give up. You see how hard Moshe Rabbeinu tried? And that was for Pharaoh. He was a wicked ruler. He was the embodiment of the Yetzer Hara. And yet, time after time, Moshe Rabbeinu refused to be defeated until he had literally had the door slammed in his face and he couldn't do anymore. Now that's different. You can't do anymore, you can't do anymore. But if there's a glimmer of hope, Moshe Rabbeinu was there. The same thing with us, with our parents, with anyone. If we're a carer in an old age home, or we're just trying to help somebody who's stubborn and you know, there's a phrase, they cut off their nose to spite their face. Yeah, they'll do anything just to, you know, they're caught up in their own ego or whatever it is, and we know we're on the outside. It could be anything. It could be a child, a son or a daughter who's going out with a Gentile. How often, unfortunately, this happens. And we're trying to tell them, look, you know, this is not the way of our family. You need to, you know, or however delicately we try and put it, and they cannot see reason. But we know because we're on the outside. They're involved. They can't see reason. And they will not listen. We cannot give up on them. We cannot give up. That's the worst thing. If there's a glimmer of hope, and inevitably there is, it's never a complete write-off. It's so rare, if at all, is a fellow Jew a complete write-off. So we have to try. We have to keep coming back. Try different methods, different ways. Try tact. Try anything. But try. You have to try. You have to try till your last breath in your body, because you have to help them. That's why Hashem put you there. Hashem said, look, who's making this situation for you? I'm making this situation for you. I'm putting this person, and I'm telling you, you need to keep trying. And you cannot give up on this person, because at the end of the day, we don't want Hashem to give up on us. Chas v'chalila. We don't want to be given up on, so we have to try and try and try again. Never ever say game over. So let's move on. The 12th Perek, verse 27. So that's Yud Bet, Pasuk Chaf Zayin. V'amartem zevach Pesach hu l'Adonai asher pasach al batei bnei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim b'nakpo et Mitzrayim v'et bateinu hitzil v'yikod ha'am v'yishtachavu. I'm loving this Chumash, by the way. Lovely big letters, you can see here. Beautiful. I can read this almost in the dark. So Baruch Hashem. You see the Otiot Machkimot, the letters make you wise. So I was used to reading from a very small Chumash and I have to take my glasses off all the time. Anyway, so what does this pasuk mean? This is talking about what we used to learn as kids at school. That Hashem passed over the houses of the Jews, he ignored the Jews, and he only killed the Egyptian firstborn. Very nice. Asher Pasach, Hashem passed over, so Pasach, same letters as Pesach. So that's why we call it Pesach. Very nice, yeah? And that's why in English we call it Passover, because Hashem passed over. Very nice. Did you ever think, why is it called Pesach? It seems like a relatively minor detail. Hashem passed over. Why don't you call it Chag? Maybe this is a bit somber. Chag. Well, we do call it Chag HaMatzot, but I'm saying the main name. Everyone goes, we don't say, are you coming over for Chag HaMatzot? Where are you going for Chag HaMatzot? Are you cleaning your house for Chag HaMatzot? No. Are you making everything Matzot dik instead of Pesach dik? We don't say that. Although it's called Chag HaMatzot in the Torah. But, I mean, in the vernacular, the way we speak, we always call it Pesach. That's it. So, it seems, like I said, it seems like a relatively minor detail. Why don't we call it, maybe this is like a bit somber, why don't we call it Chag HaMakot, almost? Okay, that might not be the best example. But we should call it Chag HaCheirut, the Festival of Freedom, because it's all about the freedom. We were released from slavery. Why don't we? You ever thought of that? We could be, going to hotels for Cheirut. Yeah, where are you going to be for Cheirut? Oh, I'm going to be in Florida, or I'm at home, I'm going to clean my house for Cheirut time. We never call it Chag. The word Cheirut never comes into it. So why don't we call it Chag HaCheirut? That would seem like the logical name for Pesach. It's all about the freedom. You know why it's called Chag Pesach? Because why did Hashem pass over the houses? Because he did it to save the Jews, to save each individual family, each individual Jew from the plague. So Pesach reflects salvation, saving these Jews, individual Jews. So we call it Chag Pesach because saving somebody from death is the greatest chesed. Helping your fellow man overshadows everything. You think about it? We could have called it even Chag Hanissim, the festival of miracles, right? Plenty of miracles happen there. What about crossing the Red Sea? What about the man? So many. No, forget it. No man, no crossing the Red Sea, no saving the Jews, no plagues, nothing. Why? It's all about helping your fellow man. That's more important than all the 10 plagues, than all the miracles, the whole saga. Put it to one side. We're talking about saving your fellow man. And the greatest chesed is to do what Hashem did. Hashem saved the people. We need to save our fellow brothers. That's the ikar, that's the main thing. To look out for your brother. Not that we have okay, no, I'm not denying the plagues. I'm not denying the miracles. God forbid. But I'm saying that's not what we call our festival. That's not the main thing. We don't need miracles. The miracles are amazing. We don't need miracles to show us, to define us. That doesn't define who we are. What defines the Jewish people is the fact that we look out for our fellow man. We ask him, what do you need? How can I help you? How can I save you? I can see you're not doing so well. Can I give you my time? Can I help you? You're sitting at home by yourself. Come, let me take you to a shir. Come, let me introduce you to this fellow who can help you and visit you. We reach out. That's what it's about. We reach out. That's the name of the game. Yeah, and it's so much so that it overshadows everything. It's something to bear in mind. That's literally, a Jew is dyed in the wool chesed. That's it. It's all about helping and helping our fellow man. So let's skip over, excuse the pun, let's pass over to the next, I didn't even mean to say that. Pass over to 13th Perek, 4th verse. Hayom atem yotzim b'chodesh ha'aviv. Okay, no, it's not that pasuk. No, no, I'm in the wrong. Am I the right one? No, maybe it's not Yud Gimel. Okay, I can't seem to find it now, but I'll quote it from memory. Here we go. It's Yud Daled, not Daled. It's 13 verse 14, not verse 4. V'haya ki yishalcha vincha machar lema mazot v'amate elav b'chozek yad hotzianu Adonai b'mitzrayim b'beit avadim. So this is a passage that we read every day in the Shacharit when we put on our tefillin. We say, mazot, what is this? And we say, b'chozek yad. Hashem took us out from Egypt with a mighty hand, from slavery to freedom. Hashem took us from the house of slavery. So traditionally, at the Seder, the phrase mazot is attributed to the Tam. We have the 4 sons. We have the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, and the V'she'enu Yidei Lishol. The wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the one who doesn't know how to ask. Yeah, we all know this. We were all at the Seder table at one point or one stage or another. So the Tam is the simple son. So what does he say? He says, what's this? Yeah, he's simple. He just says, what? What's going, what is this? Now the Chacham says something different. He says, Mazot, I'm quoting from memory now, Mazot ha'edut v'chokim v'mishpatim. I think that's how it goes. What are the testimonies, the statutes, and the judgments? So what's the difference between these two? He also says Mazot. The Chacham says Mazot. The simple son says Mazot. They both say, what's this? So why one is simple and one is got chokhmah, got wisdom? So there's a beautiful story, a mashal, brought down by the Nachalat Tzvi, and he says as follows. I think it's a parable. It might be true. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. It's a story of a caliph. A caliph is a leader, like a Muslim leader. So the caliph, he had two sons. One son was his son from the queen, and one son was his son from, I think, one of the maidservants, like a concubine or something like that. And of course, although he loved each son, he favored the son who was the from the maidservant. I think that's how it goes. So the queen came up to the king, the caliph, and said to the caliph, look, he said, you have a son from the maidservant and you have a son from me, and I'm the queen. Why are you favoring your son from the maidservant? What about my son? He's the royal blood, he's the royal son. Why are you favoring him? So the caliph thought, she's got a point and she deserves a good answer. She goes, you know what, I'll tell you what. I agree with you, there might be a little bit of favoritism going on, but let me answer this once for all. Let me give them both a test. He says, okay, you know what, I'm going to call in the royal prince. In other words, the son from the queen. So he doesn't do that. Yes, he does that, excuse me. He calls in the prince, literally the one who's under question, the one who is the less favorite son, the royal prince. He says to the prince, he says, son, I want you to do me a favor. The son says, of course, Your Majesty, what can I do? He says, I want you to go down to the tailor and buy me some thread. The son says, your wish is my command, father. And he goes out. He goes to the tailor, the royal tailor. He says, my father, the royal caliph, wants some thread. So the tailor looks at the prince and says, okay, what type of thread? And I've got all types of thread. You want wool? You want linen? You want cotton? What type of? So the prince looks and he says, well, he didn't tell me that. I guess I'll have to go back. So he goes back to the caliph. So the caliph, father, I've come back from the tailor. The father says, oh, you got me what I wanted? He says, well, not exactly. I didn't ask, or rather, maybe you didn't tell me, or I didn't ask, which thread do you want? Wool or linen? He says, wool. I'd like woolen thread. Straight away, father. And he runs out. Goes straight back to the tailor. He says, my father wants woolen thread. He says, okay, says the tailor. Fine, very good. Okay, so do you want the thick or the thin? Well, I don't know. I guess I'll have to go back to my father. Goes back to the father. Father, he goes, yes, you got me my woolen thread? He said, not exactly. I forgot to ask, do you want the thick or the thin strings? He says, I'll have the thin strings. Straight away, I will do as you say. Runs out, back to the tailor. He says, okay, now I know what I want, okay? We want the wool and we want the thin strings. The tailor says, very good, okay. So what colour do you want? He goes back. Same story, what colour? White, I want white. He goes back. Now he wants wool, thin, white. He goes, very good. Okay, so we'll get ready. Okay, so he brings him to he shows him all the thin white threads. He goes, okay, how many can I get for you? So the son again says, he didn't tell me how many. He goes back to his father, the same thing. Now he asks his father, how many? The father says, it's okay, son. You don't have to go back. That's fine. I can manage. Now, that test is finished. He calls his other son, the son of the maidservant. And he says to the maidservant son, he goes, okay, son, I want you to do me a favor. I need you to go and get me some thread from the tailor. So the son says, certainly, father. What would you like, wool or linen? I'd like wool, please. Certainly, Father. You want the thick or thin? Thick or thin. You want the which color? How many? All the questions he asked up front until he knew exactly what he had to get. And then he went, and the father said, you know what? Don't worry, I don't need it anymore. Then he goes back to the royal, the queen, and he says, you see, this is why I favor the son of the maidservant. Because him, I don't have to tell him anything. I just tell him what I need. He asks me all the questions. What do I need? This, that, Father. He won't leave without knowing exactly what he's doing. This is the story of the difference between the Tam and the Chacham. The Chacham, of course, he also says Mazot. He says, Hashem, what do you want from me? What can I do? What are the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments? He knows exactly what he's asking. He's clarifying. The simple answer just says, what? What's this? He doesn't, he's very vague. That's the difference between a Tam and a Chacham. A Chacham will always want to know exactly, will ask all the questions up front. That's what we have to achieve with our children. We have to make them, we have to be role models for our children and our students and anyone who depends on us. You have to ask questions. You can't just be happy with just, being vague. Nobody goes through life and gets anywhere with being vague. You have to know exactly what you're involving yourself in. You have to know exactly. It doesn't mean you can avoid stuff unless you know exactly what's going on. It means don't be shy of asking questions. Don't be shy of getting all the information up front. Now, again, there's a balance. It doesn't mean, my personal example is, you don't have to know everything about a telephone to know how to speak on the telephone. I'm talking about the days when we actually use a phone for speaking. Yeah. Nowadays, speaking on a phone is a very minor function. Yeah. 90% of the other functions are all nothing to do with speaking, do with typing, texting, and all the other whatever. So you don't have to know the workings, the inside, but you need to know where you stand. You need to, you must ask whatever you need to know to prepare yourself for life. We have to teach our children. You have to be questioning machines. You have to be a machine who's always asking, you want to know, you want to know, you want to know. Because you'll never, if you learn a Gemara, you need to know, what does Abaye mean? What does Rava mean? What does Tosfot mean when he says this? Don't say, oh, very nice. You learn a Tosfot. Very nice. You know what it means? No. Well, why didn't you ask a question? Don't say very nice Tosfot and then you don't know what it means. Ask. Don't be shy. Eina halamdan lomed. Eina baishan lomed. Somebody who's shy, he's not going to learn. He's going to go, oh, very nice. He'll go to a shir, very nice. You know what? You understand what you heard? No. You have to ask. We have to teach our children constantly. You don't understand? Put up your hand. Ask. Don't be shy. And at the same time, if you're teaching, don't be cross if somebody's asking a question. Always have patience. Even if they're asking a question which is lo nishma. And sometimes they ask questions because they want to annoy you. They want to. You know what? Bite your tongue. Yeah, because maybe out of that insincerity will be a little bit of sincerity. Yeah, they'll chepper you. They'll make fun of you there. But you know what? They've got a question, and it's come from somewhere which is the correct place. Throughout all the shtuyot and the making fun and the letzanot and the joking, it's a question, so answer it. Bite your tongue. Doesn't mean that you have to be chutzpah asking your Rebbe, but if you're a Rebbe or a teacher, answer the question. Put your pride away for 5 minutes. Okay, so that's the difference in a Tam and a Chacham. Now let me tell you, this parasha talks about Brit Milah, because when the Jews left Egypt, they had with them the two signs from the blood. One was blood of Korban Pesach, and one was blood of Brit Milah. Yeah, that's what happens when the Jews finally left Egypt. They had these two mitzvot with them. So let me tell you a story about the importance of Milah and how much it's at the heart of every Jew. So the story is told in Russia, back in the day when Russia was a communist country and where the Russian secret police would have no compunction about killing people if they suspected they were traitors, treason, they had, they could cause all sorts of problems for you. Yeah, so at the time in Russia, maybe we must be talking about maybe 60, 70 years ago, something like that, 80 years ago maybe, Brit Milah and Shechita were asur. You couldn't circumcise your children, you couldn't perform ritual slaughter. There must have been a lot of vegetarians there. Either that or the people who wanted to eat meat would do the Shechita in secret. Now, there was a house where two people used to live. One was Rav Isaac Roth, and one was somebody who, I don't know his name, but Rav Isaac Roth was a mohel, and the other rabbi was a shochet. So two forbidden trades within one house. And it happened that at that time, there was a third rabbi there whose name I do remember, and that is the late, great Rav Yaakov Galinsky, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, who died a number of years ago. Tremendous Talmid Chacham. Also, as a side point, he was had a tremendous sense of humor. We've told a few of his funny stories in our shiurim previously. He used to convey so much with his humor. It wasn't humor just to make fun. It was humor that conveyed a message in a beautiful way that you would never forget. So Rav Yaakov Galinsky happened to be in this house or apartment at the time, and there was a knock at the door. And who was it? It was a major from the Russian secret police. Yeah, and as a side point, I'm just remembering now, my father, Alav Shalom, went at least on one occasion to Russia, and he went to Russia to buy carpets. Yeah, he wasn't going there to spy or anything. He was on a business trip. He was followed everywhere that he went by a KGB, at least one KGB agent. He wouldn't let him out of his sight. He would go to the toilet, the KGB agent would be outside the toilet. Everywhere was tagged and tailored. He just came to do business. That's what it was like. It's hard to believe that a government could be like this, could be so paranoid, and but that's what they were like. So there's a KGB or Russian secret police, a major was knocking on the door, and he said, I know there is a mohel in here, a ritual circumciser. I want to see him. I want him. So now, I think it was Rav Yaakov Galinsky had answered the door, and Rav Isaac Roth, who was the mohel, was there, and the shochet, the slaughterer was also there. So Rav Isaac Roth said to the shochet, he said, you know what? Take your knives and get out. Run out the back quickly. Don't worry, I'll sort him out. So the shochet runs for his life with his shechita knives, and he's history. Now, it's just Rav Yaakov Galinsky is trying to talk the major out. The major goes, get out my way. And he runs in. And he sees this Rabbi Roth, who's the mohel. He says to him, are you the Jewish circumciser? So now, what's Rav Isaac Roth going to do? Now, and the major is looking around the house to see, is there anybody else here? He's looking around. Now, Rav Roth thinks, this is it, forget it, I'm a history now. So he said, are you the mohel? He says, yes, I am the mohel. So the major starts speaking to Rav Isaac Roth in Yiddish. He says to him, I'm also Jewish. He said, my wife gave birth to a son. I need you to come and circumcise my son. What did he do? He went into the house. He was looking to see if the major was looking to see if anybody was there, not because he wanted to arrest them. He wanted to make sure that he himself was not caught. So you can see, and what would have happened if one of his fellow comrades from the secret police would have heard about this? He would have been killed, no question. He would have been shot, probably on the spot. No trial, nothing. But he put his life on the line, and he revealed that he was Jewish because he wanted to circumcise his son. That's how important the mitzvah of Brit Milah, we've told so many stories about Brit Milah, how it's at the core of our neshama, collective neshama. It's ingrained in us. People who are furthest away from Yiddishkeit give their children. I've seen them in my business dealings. I've seen people who was completely not from, but yet they come to me and say, do you know? Can you find me a mohel? And I have a friend, Rabbi Dr. Leslie Solomon, tells me many stories. He goes to do Brit Milah for families that are so far away, but they insist their son has to have circumcision. It's as simple as that. So beautiful are the stories that are told about Brit Milah. And we're on the subject of Torah and how Torah is at the focal point of what we stand for. I'm going to repeat again a story which I've said already once, and then I'm going to repeat with another story which I've also said before, which I'm compelled to tell the second story because it's just beautiful. I'm going to tell you this first story. The story revolves around Rav Meir Shapiro, who was the one who started the Daf Yomi movement. So he was asked, how come you had the impetus to institute this movement of learning one whole folio of Gemara every day and covering the whole of Shas in 7.5 years? What made you get into that particular thing? So he said, you know what? I'll tell you the story, how I came onto it. And there's a few versions of the story. I'll tell you the version that I know. That once, when Rav Meir Shapiro was maybe 7 years old, he came and he saw his mother crying. And he said, Mummy, why are you crying? What's the matter? She said, I arranged for you to have a melamed, somebody to come and teach you Torah. And I arranged a fee with him, 300 coins, whatever that is, a huge amount of money. And we arranged for him to come on a certain day, and he hasn't turned up yet. And I'm worrying that maybe he thinks the fee is too low and we should have paid him even more. Now, Rav Meir Shapiro, when he heard this, he's thinking, wow, this is a fortune. You want to pay me even more than that? So she's crying, she's inconsolable. She says, Mummy, don't worry. He'll come. Maybe he's delayed for 1 day. He'll come tomorrow. So don't cry. Why are you crying? So she says, you think I'm crying because he's not coming for 1 day. 1 day is not a problem. He says, every day that goes by without Torah is disastrous. There should never be a day that should go by in your life when you don't have Torah to learn. 1 day is 1 day too much without Torah. That's why she was crying. And Rav Meir, when he heard that, he realized, every day is so important. Not a day should go by without learning Torah. This is what I'm going to dedicate my life to make paramount in the Jewish consciousness that every day has to be a Torah day. It doesn't matter if weekends, you don't have the weekend off. No, it's every day. You get up, you go to the shir, you go to the Daf Yomi. You can't say, today's my day, I'm on holiday today. I'm going to sit by the pool. Give me a break. 1 day, let me sit by the pool. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Every day has to be a Torah day. And that's why Rav Meir Shapiro dedicated his life. He made it his magnum opus. And now, I don't have to tell you the popularity of the Daf Yomi. Say about the Daf Yomi what you like. And there are critics who talk about the Daf Yomi in a negative way for different reasons. They say a person maybe should be aiming high, maybe should be doing learning more in depth or whatever. But to knock the Daf Yomi as an institution, I don't think anybody has the right to do that, because it's revolutionized the way we've learned Torah. Yeah, if you feel you can do more than Daf Yomi, so do more than that. Gesundheit, hey, go and do 2 daf, or go and do 1 daf and go in depth there, or go slower than that. But the main thing is you have to learn. Not a day must go by in your life without Torah as paramount. And finally, I'll just see if I can fit this story in. Maybe I'll let you go a little bit early. So, famously, this week's parsha talks about tefillin. I'll quote you the pasuk, Yud Gimel, pasuk Tet. That's 13, verse 9. V'haya lecha leot. V'haya lecha leot al yadcha ulezikaron b'neinecha leman tiyeh Torat Adonai b'ficha ki b'yad chazaka hotziacha Adonai mitzrayim. This talks about signs and remembrances. Yeah, without the Torah Sheba'al Peh, you would not know what this is talking about. Put a sign on your arm and a remembrance between your eyes. We know through the oral Torah that this is talking about tefillin. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, no, it doesn't say it here, it doesn't say in the Aramaic, not here, not in this pasuk anyway, this refers to tefillin. What's it? Totafot is tut put or something in African, which translates as tefillin, something like that. There's some etymology, there's some word thing that they have there that refers to tefillin, and we know that tefillin has to be black, has to be perfectly square, etc., and has to have black straps. So this is the parasha of tefillin. So let me tell you one of my favorite stories of all time, and it happens to be to do with tefillin. I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit because I don't want to miss out any detail. This is too good to miss. So there's a story is told about a young yeshiva bocher. Yeah, in this version his name is David. They call him David, maybe not his real name. And this tzaddik of a yeshiva boy, he was volunteering in an old age home. Yeah, it's a very, very good thing to do. I know my kids are involved with many kids from Edgware, where I come from. They do this thing. They visit every Shabbat. They go to the old age home and they visit the people. There are many, many kids who do this. I don't know if it's voluntary. I don't know if it was suggested to them. But whatever happens, it's such a beautiful thing. I can't tell you. Old people who are sitting with, all they see is other old people and carers. Who the carers might be tzaddikim, but they want to see they want to relive their youth. My son and my oldest son and my daughter went to visit somebody on Shabbat, and he was telling them all sorts of stories about the war, that he did this and he did that, and he was basically reliving his youth. And my kids were fascinated, and they said, "Daddy, his house was like a museum. He had this medal on the wall, that medal on the wall, this picture, that picture. He met this film star, he met that famous person, he met the person, Tessa Cohen behind Tesco's, and this, all these stories, and they were fascinated." But what it must have done for that old man is unbelievable. He's now reliving his youth. He's, you're enlivening him. It's a tremendous mitzvah. So I strongly encourage it. Now this tzaddik in our story, David, he volunteered, like he did it as a proper, like a job. Not just a one-off. He did this like as a volunteering job. So he would go, and because he was a good frum boy, he would get the elderly people in this old age home to come and daven. He would suggest to them, do you want to come and pray, make a minyan, or even to have the ladies come and pray in the ladies section. So some of them would say yes, and some of them would say no. That's fair enough. They don't have, you're not going to force them. You tell them, and some of them took very well to it. Some of them said, it's not for us. We're too old. It's too difficult. Okay, fair enough. But there was one fellow who was actually, not only did he refuse to come to the prayers, he was actually angry. You could see there was something there. And he would react angrily. And at one stage, he actually cursed the person who asked him to come to tefillah. I'm not sure if it was David himself or one of the other volunteers. So they came to David and they said, look, this fellow, he just doesn't want to come. He doesn't want to move. He's insulting people now. So David went up to this fellow, and he was a good boy, and he spoke very patiently to this old man. He said, look, I understand you don't want to come to the prayer services. that's fair enough. I've got no issue with that. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But I'm not sure it's such a good idea if you will shout and insult the people who are asking you. They're only trying to help you. If it's not for you, say it's not for me, but I don't think anything good will come out of it, insulting the person. So this fellow, you can see that he wasn't apologizing, but he didn't want to pursue the argument. So the old man said, wheel me into my room and close the door. I want to tell you a story. So, okay, so David said, right, fine. He wheeled the old man into his room. He shut the door. And the old man told David the following story. He said, you look at me, I don't look even Jewish, let alone religious. He said, but I came from an observant family. He says, in the war, all my family was killed except my father and myself. We were taken to the same camp. And my father came across tefillin of the head, the tefillin shel rosh. And he would put it on every day. And he really wanted to have the tefillin shel yad. But he had what he had, and he put on the shel rosh, and he would give it to other people to put on the shel rosh. Once he heard of a man who actually was in possession of both tefillin, shel rosh and shel yad. And he wanted to go up to that man and say, look, can I borrow a tefillin? Maybe we can share them out. So what happens? My father went and he smuggled, what happened was, the man who took the tefillin, who had the tefillin, he was killed by the Nazis, Yamach Shemam. And my father, when he heard about this, he said, Chaval, I need to go and recover the tefillin, because he must have kept them secretly in his room. I'm going to recover them and keep them, and then I'll have them, and I'll be able to put them on, I'll be able to give them to other people. So he went into the room, the bunk, where he wanted to find the dead man's tefillin, my father. And it happened to be that this was just before my bar mitzvah. So he probably saw it as a sign from heaven that you have tefillin and you need to give them to your son. So he was so happy. He went, under risk of death, he found the tefillin. On the way back, he came back to the room and he was going to give me the tefillin, and into the room burst in a Nazi. And he saw my father and he said, what is that? And he took out his gun, and in front of my face, he shot my father in front of my face. I was not even 13 years old. He said, when I saw that, he said, I took the tefillin, I hid the tefillin. He said, but I asked myself, how can I pray to a God who would do this to a 13-year-old boy, not even 13 years old, would show my father murdered in front of my face because of tefillin? And and when he was telling the story, he said, go open the drawer. And he opened the drawer, and David, he saw the tefillin. He goes, look at this tefillin. This is dry leather, rotting leather. For this, my father had to be killed? Why should I? What loyalty do I have to put on these boxes? So now, what would you say if you hear such a story? What could you say if you heard it? I would not know what to say if I had such a thing. Yeah, you couldn't say Gamzul. What could it? Gamzul Tova. What? Nothing you could say could have any solace, could show any sympathy or empathy to this old man. So, okay, he went out. He said, okay, there's nothing I can do. Now, the young man, David, this affected him to such a degree that he kept thinking about it. He couldn't even sleep or eat properly. He was so affected by the whole thing. He said, you know what, I just can't let this go. And it happened that there was one man in that old age home, another man who needed to say Kaddish, and they needed to get a minyan. Now, what was he going to do? What was David going to do? If he only had 9 people, was he going to go to this old man who already had come up with such a sad story and ask him to make a minyan? Maybe the old man would shout at him. So he decided, you know what? Ein li breira, I don't have any choice. I need somebody to make up the minyan. I have to ask this old man. If he's going to shout at me, he's going to shout at me. He went into the room and he said in his politest voice, it was prepared to be shouted at. So David said to the old man, he said, I'm really sorry to disturb you. I know this is the last thing you want to hear, but there's a man who's waiting to say Kaddish. And it would mean the world to him if you came and make up the quorum, make up the minyan. So now the old man, and I was thinking, he was waiting for the backlash now. The old man said to him, you know what? If I come this once, would you drop the subject after that? You're going to leave me alone? He said, yes. You know what? If you come, I'm not going to trouble you anymore. It's history. Please just come and make up this minyan. The fellow said, okay. So then David now, he thought he's on a winning streak. He thought he was going to go for the maximum now. He said, and you know what? Can I ask you, shall I go to your drawer and bring your tefillin? So the old man says, okay. But after this, that's it. You're not going to trouble me anymore? He said, no, that's it. So they bring the tefillin, and David wheels this old man out of the room. He makes up the minyan, and he sees the old man. He's remembering how he's putting on tefillin, and I'm sure there's people helping him put on tefillin. And as he's putting on tefillin, he's praying, and you can see this old man. He's changing. He starts crying, and he's obviously affected by this mitzvah that he abandoned since, how many years before? He was not even 13, so maybe this is like 50 years before. And he's sitting in the shul with tears, he's crying. So David comes to him and he says, are you okay? Shall I take you to the doctor? He says, he didn't get any response. The fellow was crying and crying and crying. And he was saying, Tati, Tati, it feels so right. And he was looking at the tefillin. And he said to David, he said, afterwards he said, during the time I was wearing those tefillin, I felt like my father was with me. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe, they say by chuppah, all the relatives, I think it's from the last 10 generations who'd passed away, they come to the chuppah. I think the Zohar says this. Yeah, I know for sure dead grandparents. I seem to remember they say up to 10 generations. I'm not sure, I can't verify that. But maybe it was true. Maybe the old man's father came and he was with him. He was getting nachas from his son. Eventually he put the tefillin on. So now what happened after that? Now the old man already, he'd broken his negative attitude towards the tefillin. And he now wanted to put the tefillin on. So David now made it his job. He would wheel him every day and take him to shul, and the old man would put on tefillin. Can you imagine that, being that young man, putting tefillin on the old man and seeing him? What an unbelievable emotion must have been going through that young man. And the old man, what he must have been going through. And he became like a Baal Tshuva. This man who, in his 70s or 80s or whatever it was, became like a Baal Tshuva. Then, not long after, sadly, that man passed away. And David was affected. He was very sad. But a few weeks later, somebody comes to David's house, knocks on the door, and says, you don't know me, but I need to tell you that the old man who you helped with the tefillin, that was my father. And he used to talk about you. He used to tell me, he used to speak so fondly about you. He used to say that you know, this man is unbelievable. He helps me put on my tefillin. He takes me to shul every day. And I'm telling you, from what my father told me, you made his last days in this world bearable. And in fact, the daughter tells David, he says, my father actually died wearing his tefillin. So can you imagine how this tefillin and how the neshama of the father was almost bound up with the tefillin? And you see how that mitzvah is so special that the father was prepared to give up his life to go and get tefillin for his son. And he literally did give up his life. And you see how the son, after so many years of being bitter, and who can judge him? Who can blame a fellow? And he sees such a thing. We cannot, and we cannot, and we should not judge a person who sees such a terrible thing happen in front of his eyes as a young boy. And this is not this is not a solitary case. How many countless times there were cases of children who watched their parents executed before them. So we cannot judge, but we see it was the tefillin who brought that man back to tshuva. Yehi Ratzon, all of us should take the example of this tefillin, which is among 612 other mitzvot. They can change us. If we only expose our fellow man to these mitzvot. We might not see it in our lifetime, but you can see the powerful effect that a mitzvah can have on a person. No matter how far away he is, it will affect him. Yehi Ratzon, all of us should reach out to our brothers, like it's implied in the word Pesach, which is saving our fellow man, more important than the miracles and the plagues and all the wonders and everything that Hashem did for us. It's all about reaching out and helping a fellow man. Yehi Ratzon, all of us should reach out, help our fellow man, and bring us all to the final stage of the Geula Shleima. May it happen without any further pain in our time. Techev u'miyad. Amen. Thank you for listening.